This is really good for your skin.
I smell like a sugar cookie.
Melt the butter down, apply the butter.
Yeah, make sure you preheat the oven to 450 for 20 minutes. This is a Bachelor recap from a guy. In the words of the famed philosopher Ludacris, I gotta know what's your fantasy. It's Fantasy Suites Week. Or wait, sorry, it's Fantasy Suites Week. And what better way to start off the sexiest episode of the entire season than with a heart-to-heart with Matt's dad? Now, if you know these recaps, you know like 95% of everything I do and say is just a joke. But real talk, the convo Matt had with his dad was, I think, one of the realest moments in the history of this show. Now, Matt did tweet during the show about how often in media black fathers are painted in a negative light, like this episode kind of did. He tweeted, "Tonight's convo with my dad was hard to experience, and it's just as hard to watch all this time later, especially knowing the world is watching with me. I just wanted to say that too often we see dangerous stereotypes and negative depictions of black fathers in media, and they have consequences when presented without context." And then he provided a link with more info, context, and understanding, which I don't disagree with at all. I also like to think that showing tough conversations like this could be important to a lot of people as well.
I wanted you here because I want to have a relationship with you going forward, and for me to have that with you, you have to know where I'm at.
Just my 2 cents, which I mean that literally because my opinion isn't worth any more than 2 cents, or anyone else's for that matter, especially people who can speak to it better than I can. Now, Michelle gets the first fantasy suite date card, and they have a Pennsylvania Dutch spa day. Look, hand raised. I'm all about a good spa day, but not sure I ever want to put the words Pennsylvania and Dutch in front of that. A Pennsylvania Dutch spa sounds less like a romantic date and more like a sex position. But hey, fantasy suites. On this date, they put oatmeal on their feet.
That sounds terrible.
They took baths in milk. And they rubbed themselves down with sticks of butter.
This is really good for your skin.
I smell like a sugar cookie.
Oh, so much butter.
Oh yeah, there it is.
That's just like the release of the stress.
Like, call me old-fashioned and or on a diet, but rubbing sticks of butter on someone doesn't really get my engines revving, if you know what I mean. Do you want her to be your fiance or dinner? Like, yeah, I know Matt is looking for his butter half, but this is ridiculous. Like, is this really churning them on? Like, Matt, the phrase butter your muffin is a double entendre.
Would you like us to assign someone to butter your muffin?
I what?
You're not supposed to literally butter a girl's muffin or her derriere. I feel like this is how the wrong message gets spread. Like, when people talk about gender roles in relationships, they're not literal roles. This whole thing is just butterly ridiculous. Like, I can't believe it's not butter. I can't believe it is butter. So much butter. Like, are they applying blue bonnet or blue balls? Which I guess would technically make it nut butter. Country crock? More like country cock. All right. I'm done. I'm done with the butter jokes. I promise. Hopefully I got at least one of those butter jokes to land. Oh, legs. I just hope at least one of them was margarinely funny. So that night they go back to the fantasy suite, and Michelle tells Matt that she loves him. Because...
How do you not grow closer after smearing butter over somebody?
No, I think you should be asking, how can you? So then the next morning, Michelle shows back up at the house, and Bree and Rachel ask her what she did on her date. And she says, "We went to a spa, and we rubbed sticks of butter on each other." And if you thought that date was awkward to watch, it was even more awkward to watch it try and be explained. Like, this may come as a surprise, but there's no cute way to explain that your boyfriend rubbed sticks of butter on your body. Next up was Bree's date, and they go on a hike that was just filled with innuendos left and right. Starting with Matt telling Bree that there were tons of snakes in the Pennsylvania forest. And Bree said, "Wait, are there really snakes here?" And Matt said, "Yeah, big ones." And then they get to the campsite, and Matt asks Bree for help to pitch a tent.
The first thing we should do is pitch our tent.
Okay, and you know how to pitch a tent?
Yeah, I know how to pitch a tent. Pitch many tents.
All right. Thanks for helping me pitch the tent.
You're welcome. I honestly wouldn't have been able to get it up.
The tent?
Now, as a guy, when I hear pitch a tent, my first thought doesn't even go to camping. This is what I hear.
The first thing we should do is
Boner.
And you know how to.
Boner.
yeah, I know how to.
Boner. Boner. Boner.
All right. Thanks for helping me.
Boner.
Welcome.
Only thing we were missing was Matt assuring Bree that he had wood for the fire. Then Matt tricked Bree into thinking that their fantasy suite date was going to be taking place in that tent, which made Bree feel extremely uncomfortable.
I thought Matt was joking, but then I started thinking, oh, I think we're actually sleeping in the tent tonight.
But hey, Bree, it's better to camp outside than to be buttered up inside. The next morning, after Matt probably pitched a few more tents, they showed them cooking breakfast, and sure enough, a stick of butter was used on the frying pan.
Never be too much butter.
Which is how sticks of butter should be used on dates.
Never be too much butter. Never be too much butter. Never be too much butter.
And if the theme of this episode wasn't butter, it was. Then it was definitely Rachel struggling with the idea of Matt being intimate with the other women. She kept saying she was in her own head about it all, which I'm sure was true, but I also wonder if that's like a symptom of concussions. So on their date, they make pottery.
And understanding.
Ooh. Got lopsided.
But midway through the date, Rachel gets up and pulls Matt aside. She says because she wanted to get her thoughts off of her chest.
I feel like I need to talk to you. I don't want it to like ruin our day.
But we all know it's because making pottery is boring. I mean, just look at their faces.
Perfect.
The first thing you're gonna do is start with a really strong foundation. The thing that's great about ceramics is that it really is like building a relationship.
If it really is like building a relationship, then why didn't they allow Matt to make 30 ceramic pots all at once? Maybe I'm naive, but I'm just confused about why the whole like making pottery thing is sexy based off of a single movie scene in the early 90s. I mean, based on that logic, is it also really sexy to pull up to a stranger's house and just ask them if you could use their shower?
If you don't mind, I'm gonna just take a quick shower while you're finishing up here.
So they had a heart-to-heart, and honestly, I don't really know what was said because I couldn't stop focusing on the fact that Matt's collar was on the outside of his jacket, bugging me the entire time. Then later, Rachel said she would go through this entire thing 100 more times just to be with Matt. And it's like, I don't know if you'd be able to survive 100 more times. Then that night at the fantasy suite, fireworks went off. And that's actually not an innuendo. Literal fireworks went off outside their window. And that wrapped arguably the most exhausting episode of the season thus far, at least for Matt. I mean, one guy having sex with 3 different women in a single episode. I mean, what is this? The Bachelor or The Good Doctor? So at the rose ceremony, Matt gives roses to both Michelle and
Rachel.
meaning Bree was sent home to that giant stuffed bunny. Now, before we get out of here, I just want to say to any women who watch these recaps, happy belated International Women's Day, especially to Kim.
I really want you.
I'm Kimberly. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
I really want you. I really want you. Now, no matter what I say.
All right. I'll try to make these butter next week. Thanks for watching. But I gotta know what's your fantasy.
Never be too much butter. Never be too much butter. Never be too much butter. Never be too much butter.
The things you do for love.